Welcome to the Occupational Safety Leadership Podcast, episode number 287. And in today's episode, we're going to do just a little bit of math, and we'll talk about calculating your minimum and maximum sampling time. So I'll try not to get too much into a boring story, but a safety professional contacted me and said, "Hey, I got this little problem. I have some folks who go into an area. They wanted to know." The chemical, of course, and then they wanted to know if it was hazardous, and they kind of went into the whole thing, So not just the fact that a person has to go back and do a much better job of really getting with the folks, of course. Like I get that part, of course, but the big question came to is that this person wanted to do some sampling so that they could literally show the people, hey, this is the chemical, and this is what it came back to when you do your task. So one of the problems the person was having is, but it's a short duration task. How do I even do this thing if I'm not, if they're worried about the task time only, because of course they're not exposed to it in other places then. So that's what got us talking about minimum and maximum sampling time. So in this example, so anybody who's watching, of course, we're going to talk about hydrogen chloride. Also known as hydrochloric acid. So as the acid will go from its liquid to its gas, it's going to leave some vapors behind that. So and in the previous example, the guy was talking about a totally separate one, but that was such a how can I put it? That was such a small use chemical that it just would not apply to a lot of people out there. So I then chose hydrogen chloride. Let's look at, if you just now in this episode, of course, we're literally talking about sampling time. We're not going to talk about, hey, this is how you prep the filters and calibrate the pump, all that stuff. That's for other episodes. We're literally just talking about sampling time. So I like to use that NIOSH method out there. So I'm a little old school. I like to send it out to a lab that I know is certified to do this, American Industrial Hygiene Association, all that good stuff. Then they're certified to do this. So I have that at the end, and I could say a certified third party did this. It wasn't me who set up the pump. I didn't do the filters. I didn't do, all that kind of stuff. I really want somebody else. Plus, I want it to be as accurate and precise as it possibly can be out there. So in this example here, so for hydrogen chloride, it's NIOSH method 7907, 7907. And so you would basically say, I'm looking for this chemical when you get on the NIOSH site. I'm looking for the sampling, and then of course it'll give you a list of the sampling out there. In this instance, for this one, what we're going to choose is that the person will wear a pump and a filter, and all that good stuff. Of course, you can find ones if you're going to use those sorbent tubes or other types of methods. This one here is going to be for the filters. So it says you calibrate the pump to 2 liters a minute. And so that doesn't mean you do 1.9. You don't do 2.7 because you want to get even more, because the task is very short in duration out there. It gives you very specific parameters to follow. So we know we have to calibrate the pump. Now we know that we have to have a air volume of 30 liters for the minimum, and 60 is going to be the max. So we just do some very simple math. 30 divided by 2 is going to be 15. That's going to be your minimum. Your maximum, 600 divided by 2, is 300. And of course that equals 5 hours. And so to kind of get back to the story, the person with their chemical and their sampling time and all that said, this task is very short duration. We're not going to hit 15. How do I somehow equate this? And you just literally put in an aerial monitor and you say, hey, this is what is what it was for 15. I know that you guys do a task that only takes 5, but this is what it was for 15. And if you want to say also in worst case scenario, let's say that somebody is going to be in there for 5 hours. You then say, okay, I've now run it for 5 hours then, that's going to be my maximum time then, so now that's given this scenario in this example that we're talking about then, well, what if you had to run it for 8 hours? You want to get a whole shift exposure out there then, then that gets tough then, so you can do some area ones, you can do some personal ones, you can, all that kind of stuff then to equal 8 hours then, but that's really hard then, so you may have to look for, well, what do I find for a alternate method out there that's going to be acceptable? And acceptable means that it goes to the lab, of course. Acceptable means that you tell people before that you put this on, like, I'm looking at alternate methods because of the scenario that we have. It does not fall within the parameters, and so do everything you can to be upfront with people then, so these are not always cut and dry things. You may have to look for you may have to literally call a expert out there. So I am not an expert. I know enough, of course, but I'm certainly not an expert in this field. And even I call people because anytime I do math, I feel real confident, but I'm always not really sure, of course. So I'm like, well, let's have somebody else kind of look and double check. And also, of course, I don't want to come up with the plan and wink, wink, the plan is perfect because it was me that came up with it. I want others to look at my plan too and kind of say, hey, that seems like that's going to be a good plan. Or let's look at some of the holes that are maybe there that weren't really evident at first then. So at this point, we're deviating from the what the whole goal of the podcast was. But when you look at your minimum and maximum sampling times, make sure that you do not deviate from that, regardless, of course, of the chemical. Some of them out there are going to have an actual range out there. It'll say like calibrate pump, 1.5 to 2.2 or something. Of course, I'm just throwing out numbers at that. Out there, so that can help you to go back and kind of speed up to get the volume of air that you need out there, but that's not always a 100% science too, so we have to look at those things. And with that, I'm starting to deviate and drone on, so it's time to go ahead and wrap up today. I want to thank everybody for joining me today. We basically talked about the minimum and maximum sampling times then. We did just a little bit of math then, but a lot of it was just more of how do you really find out what you have to do out there? What sampling type are you really going to do? Do you want to use the badge? Are you going to do the sorbent tubes, which are very short term, very, very good for a stale or something, but like all things that, it's not quite as accurate as sending it out to a lab out there. So with that, let's wrap it up. We talked about minimum and maximum sampling times. I want to thank everybody for joining me. My name is Dr. David Ayers. Thank you and have a safe day.